The call came on the night of my biggest triumph. Isn't that how karma works? Just when you think you've finally proven everyone wrong, life throws you a curveball that makes you question everything. I'm Ren, and I was standing in my first solo exhibition at the Azure Gallery, champagne in hand, surrounded by my artwork and the gentle murmur of appreciation from Manhattan's elite art crowd. My best friend Sasha squeezed my arm, pointing out yet another red dot appearing beside one of my paintings. "That's the 8th one tonight," she squealed. God, your dad would eat his words if he could see this. I forced a smile, but the mention of my father still stung, even after 5 years. "Let's not go there tonight, Sash." Corey, my partner and the gallery owner, approached with a broad smile. "The critics are loving it, babe. That piece about urban isolation? They're calling it a masterpiece." I should have been ecstatic. This was everything I'd worked for since walking away from my father's empire. Tony Lawson, CEO of Lawson Industries, hadn't spoken to me since the day I told him I was choosing art school over business school. "You're throwing away your future," he'd said, his voice cold as steel. "Don't expect any support from me." My phone buzzed in my clutch. Unknown number. I usually ignored these, but something made me step away from the crowd and answer. "Is this Ren Lawson?" A woman's voice, professional but gentle. "Yes, speaking." "This is Dr. Wells from Mount Sinai Hospital. I'm your father's physician. I know this is unexpected, but your father has been diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. He needs a bone marrow transplant, and we've tested all immediate family members. You're his only viable match." The champagne glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the polished concrete floor. Several guests turned to stare, but I barely noticed. "Ren?" Sasha was at my side instantly, her hand on my shoulder. "What's wrong?" I held up a finger, trying to focus on Dr. Wells's voice as she explained the urgency of the situation. "How long does he have?" I managed to ask. "Without the transplant? Maybe 3 months. With it, his chances of recovery are good. I know there's history between you two. Your mother mentioned the estrangement." Mom. Of course she'd been trying to reach me. I'd been screening her calls, too focused on the exhibition. "I'll need time to think about it," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Of course. But please don't take too long. Here's my direct number." After hanging up, I turned to find both Sasha and Corey watching me with concern. "My father's dying," I said flatly. "And apparently, I'm the only one who can save him." Sasha's eyes widened. "Holy shit." Corey pulled me into a hug, but I remained stiff. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. I looked around the gallery, at my artwork displayed proudly on the pristine walls. Each piece represented a middle finger to my father's dismissal of my choices. The red dots beside them proved I wasn't the failure he'd predicted. "I'm thinking about karma," I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "The daughter he disowned is his only hope." "Ren," Sasha started, but I cut her off. "No, this is perfect actually." A plan was forming in my mind, something deliciously vindictive yet justified. He needs me now. After all these years of acting like I don't exist, he needs me. "Whatever you're thinking, slow down," Corey warned. "This isn't just about revenge. It's literally life and death." I walked to my centerpiece, a massive canvas depicting a man in a suit, his face obscured by shadow, standing alone in an empty boardroom. I'd painted it thinking of my father, though I'd never admitted that to anyone. "You know what the worst part was?" I said, staring at the painting. "He never even looked at my work, not once. He dismissed my entire career without ever seeing what I could do." My phone buzzed again. Mom this time. I declined the call. "So what are you going to do?" Sasha asked quietly. I turned back to them, my mind made up. "I'm going to save his life, but first, he's going to have to swallow his pride and acknowledge everything he said I couldn't do." "Be careful," Corey said, pulling me close. "Revenge has a way of burning both ends." I leaned into him, watching as another red dot was placed beside one of my paintings. "Sometimes," I whispered, "karma needs a little help." The memory of my last confrontation with my father played in my mind as I sat in Dr. Wells's sterile office the next morning. 5 years ago, I'd stood in his mahogany-lined study, portfolio in hand, trying one last time to make him understand. "Just look at them," I'd begged, spreading my sketches across his desk. I'm good at this, Dad. Really good. He hadn't even glanced at them. Being good at drawing pretty pictures won't secure your future, Ren. The company needs you. The company needs an heir, I'd corrected him. It doesn't need me specifically. Don't be dramatic, he'd said, shuffling my artwork aside to reach for some contracts. This rebellious phase needs to end. I'd gathered my drawings, hands shaking. This isn't a phase. This is who I am. Then you're no daughter of mine. Dr. Wells's voice pulled me back to the present. The procedure itself is relatively straightforward, she explained, spreading out medical documents. We'll harvest stem cells from your blood through a process called apheresis. Will it hurt? I asked, not sure why I cared. There can be some discomfort, yes. We'll give you injections for 5 days before the collection to increase stem cell production. Common side effects include bone pain, fatigue. My phone buzzed. Sasha, you okay? Want me to come with? Has he asked for me specifically? I interrupted Dr. Wells. She hesitated. Your father is private about his feelings, but your mother... That's a no then. I stood up, pacing the small office. He knows I'm the only match? Yes, we informed him yesterday. And he still hasn't asked for me himself? I laughed bitterly. Typical. Ren, Dr. Wells leaned forward, her expression gentle but serious. I understand there's history here, but time is crucial. Your father's condition is deteriorating rapidly. My phone buzzed again. Mom this time. Please call me, sweetheart. We need to talk. I'll do it, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. But I have conditions. Dr. Wells nodded cautiously. Medical decisions should be not medical conditions. I met her eyes. Personal ones. Before she could respond, a knock at the door interrupted us. My mother burst in, looking exactly as I remembered, but somehow smaller, more fragile. Ren, she breathed, moving to hug me. I stepped back. You should have told me yourself, Mom, not through his doctor. I tried calling, for what, a day, after 5 years of taking his side? I never took sides, she looked hurt. I supported your art. I sent you birthday cards, Christmas gifts, while living in his house, spending his money, watching him erase me from the family photos. My voice cracked. You chose peace over justice, Mom, every single day. Dr. Wells cleared her throat. Should I give you two a moment? No need, I said. I was just leaving. I'll do the transplant, but first, I need to talk to him, face to face. Mom reached for my arm. Honey, he's very weak. Perfect, I pulled away. Then maybe for once he'll actually listen. Outside the hospital, Sasha was waiting with coffee. Thought you might need this, she said, handing me a cup. How'd it go? I'm going to save his life, I said, taking a sip. But first he's going to come to my exhibition. He's going to stand up in front of everyone and admit he was wrong about me. Sasha nearly choked on her coffee. Holy shit, Ren, that's... justified? I was going to say intense. She studied my face. Are you sure about this? Using his life as leverage? He used my entire future as leverage, I snapped. Told me it was either his way or nothing. Well, now it's my turn to make the rules. And what if he refuses? Then he's not just a bad father, I said, tossing my empty cup in a nearby bin. He's a proud fool who'd rather die than admit he was wrong about his daughter. My phone buzzed yet again. This time it was Corey. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But remember, revenge might feel good now. But can you live with the consequences? I stared at his message for a long moment. Could I live with using my father's illness as a bargaining chip? Could I live with letting him die if he refused? But then I remembered all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, all the family events I'd missed, all the times I'd checked the mail hoping for some sign that he still cared. I need to see him, I told Sasha. Today. She squeezed my hand. Want me to come with? I shook my head. No, this is between me and him. It's time to find out if his pride is really worth dying for. The hospital room was smaller than I expected for someone of my father's status. No mahogany panels here, just sterile white walls and the steady beep of monitors. He lay propped up in bed, still wearing a dress shirt despite the IV in his arm. Some habits die hard, I guess. Ren. His voice was weaker than I remembered, but his eyes were sharp as ever. You came. Not for you. I remained standing by the door. For Mom. And because letting you die would make me as heartless as you. He sighed, adjusting himself in the bed. If you came to throw accusations, I came to make a deal. I moved closer, noting how the illness had hollowed his cheeks. Isn't that the language you understand best? Always so dramatic. He tried to sound dismissive, but a coughing fit ruined the effect. I waited until it passed. Here's my offer. I'll do the transplant. But first you're going to attend my exhibition. He stared at me. That's all? No. I pulled up a chair but didn't sit. You're going to stand up in front of everyone. The critics, the buyers, your business friends, and publicly acknowledge that you were wrong about me. Wrong about my choices. Wrong about my art. The monitors beeped in the silence that followed. His face flushed with anger, or maybe fever. Absolutely not. Then find another donor. I turned to leave. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You'd let me die over a speech? I spun back. You let me die 5 years ago. My dreams, my identity, everything I was. You killed it all because it didn't fit your precious plan. I was protecting you. You were protecting your ego. The words echoed off the walls. And now your ego is literally killing you. Poetic, isn't it? A nurse poked her head in. Everything okay in here? Fine, we said simultaneously. And for a moment, I saw a flash of our old connection. After she left, Mom slipped in. She must have been waiting outside. I heard shouting, she said, looking between us. Your daughter is attempting blackmail, Dad informed her. Your husband is choosing pride over survival, I countered. Mom sat heavily in the chair I'd ignored. Enough, both of you. Ren, honey, he's sick. This isn't the time for... When is the time, Mom? When he's dead? When there's nothing left to resolve? I pulled out my phone, pulled up the gallery website. Look, Dad, actually look. I held the phone in front of him. He turned away. Fine. I started reading reviews out loud. Lawson's work demonstrates a masterful understanding of light and shadow. Her commentary on modern isolation is haunting and profound. One of the most promising new artists in New York. Stop it, he muttered. The centerpiece alone sold for... I said stop. He knocked the phone from my hand. It clattered across the floor. Mom retrieved it, hands shaking. Tony, please, just look. I don't need to look at pictures to know I was right, he said. Success in art is fleeting. The family business is doing fine without me, I finished. Just like I'm doing fine without it. The difference is, right now, you're not fine at all. His heart monitor picked up speed. Mom noticed too, moving to his side. Ren, maybe we should continue this later. No. I stepped closer to his bed. Here's what's going to happen. You have until tomorrow to decide. Either you swallow your pride and acknowledge my success publicly, or you can explain to your shareholders why you chose death over admitting you were wrong about your daughter. You've become cruel, he whispered. I learned from the best. I headed for the door, then paused. The exhibition's next Friday. Dr. Wells says you're strong enough to attend for an hour. Think about it. Mom followed me into the hallway. Honey, please, there has to be another way. There was another way. For 5 years, there were other ways. He chose none of them. He's still your father. No. I felt tears threatening, but held them back. He made it very clear that he stopped being my father the day I chose my own path. Now he can deal with the consequences of that decision. And what about your consequences? She touched my arm. Can you live with them? I pulled away. I've been living with his consequences for 5 years. It's his turn now. As I walked away, I heard her call after me. He keeps every article about you, every review. He pretends he doesn't care. But he does, Ren. He does. I kept walking. If that was true, he could prove it, in front of everyone. My phone buzzed with a text from Sasha. How'd it go? I typed back. Ball's in his court now. We'll see if his pride is stronger than his will to live. You're stress painting again, Corey observed from the doorway of my studio. Empty coffee cups and paint-splattered newspapers littered the floor around my easel. I'm not stressed, I said, attacking the canvas with angry red strokes. I'm working. It's 3 a.m. He picked his way through the chaos. And that's the third canvas you've started tonight. I stepped back, realizing I'd painted another shadowy businessman. Just like the one from the exhibition. Just like my father. Dr. Wells called, I said, dropping my brush into a jar of murky water. His condition's getting worse. The cancer's aggressive. Corey wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. Have you heard from him? Radio silence. Mom says he's being stubborn. I leaned back against Corey's chest. Maybe I'm being stubborn too. You think? I pulled away. Don't you start. I'm just saying there might be a middle ground here. He gestured at my paintings. Look at what this is doing to you. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Mom's number. He's agreed, she said without preamble. He'll come to the exhibition. My heart jumped. And the public acknowledgement? A pause. He wants to meet, at your studio, today. 2 hours later, my father walked into my creative space, leaning on a cane I'd never seen before. Mom hovered nearby like she expected him to collapse any second. Maybe she was right. He looked worse than he had in the hospital. Nice space, he said, looking around at the paint-splattered walls and finished canvases. Thanks. The rent's reasonable since it's not in a mahogany-lined skyscraper. He winced at the jab but continued moving through the studio, stopping at each painting, actually looking at them. Finally. These are... He cleared his throat. These are quite good. I know. I crossed my arms. So, you wanted to meet? He turned to face me. I'll come to your exhibition. I'll even make a speech. But I have conditions too. You're not really in a position to... Let me finish. He held up a hand. I'll acknowledge your talent, your success, but I won't apologize for trying to protect you from an uncertain future. Protect me? I laughed. You disowned me. Because I was terrified. The outburst seemed to drain him. He sank onto a paint-stained stool. Do you know how many artists actually succeed? How many end up struggling their whole lives? So you decided to guarantee my failure by cutting me off completely? Mom stepped between us. Please, both of you. Stay out of this, Elena. Dad snapped, then immediately softened. Sorry, I need to say this. He pulled something from his jacket pocket, a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges. What's that? I asked. My father's letter to me, when I told him I wanted to study music instead of business. His hands shook slightly. I never showed this to anyone, not even your mother. I took the letter hesitantly. As I read, my breath caught. The words could have been written by my father to me. The same disappointment, the same ultimatums. You wanted to be a musician? He nodded. Piano, I was quite good, but my father... He gestured at the letter. Well, you know how that story ends. You gave in, I said softly. I gave in. Built the company bigger than he ever dreamed. But I always wondered... He looked at my paintings again. You're stronger than I was, braver. The letter trembled in my hands. Why didn't you ever tell me this? Because admitting it meant facing my own cowardice. He stood slowly, unsteady on his feet. I'll come to your exhibition. I'll make the speech. Not because you're forcing me, but because you deserve it. You did what I couldn't. Mom was crying silently. I felt my own eyes burning. Dad! He swayed slightly, and Mom rushed to steady him. Just promise me one thing. Don't do the transplant out of revenge. Do it because, despite everything, we're still family. As they left, I sank to the floor, his father's letter still clutched in my hand. Corey found me there an hour later, surrounded by scattered art supplies and complicated emotions. You okay? He asked, sitting beside me. I wanted this to be simple, I whispered. Revenge, justice. But it's not simple at all, is it? He took my hand. Family never is. My phone buzzed. A text from Sasha. Did he agree? I stared at the message, thinking about fathers and children, about art and fear, about revenge and forgiveness. Yes, I typed back, but I'm not sure who won anymore. The pre-transplant tests felt endless. Blood draws, physical exams, psychological evaluations. Through it all, my father's letter to his father stayed in my jacket pocket, its edges softening from constant handling. "You're a good candidate," Dr. Wells said, reviewing my results. "We can schedule the procedure for next week, after your exhibition." "How's he doing?" I asked, rolling down my sleeve after the latest blood draw. "Holding on. Your mother says he's been practicing his speech." I snorted, probably having his PR team write it. "Actually," Mom's voice came from the doorway, "he's been writing it himself, in the hospital garden, every morning." She looked exhausted, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones after too many nights in hospital chairs. "You should go home, get some rest," I told her. "I will. But first..." She pulled out her phone, showed me a photo. My father sat in the hospital garden, legal pad on his lap, pen in hand. He looked small in the morning light, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him. "He's really trying, Ren." I touched the letter in my pocket. "Yeah, well, maybe he should have tried 5 years ago. Maybe we all should have." She sat beside me. "I found something yesterday, cleaning his home office. Wanna see?" She pulled out a manila folder, thick with papers. Inside were printouts of every online article about my art, every review, every gallery mention. Some had his handwritten notes in the margins. Strong composition. Excellent use of light. "My daughter did this." "He's been following your career all along," Mom said softly, too proud to admit it, but too invested to look away. I flipped through the articles, dates going back years. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me?" Before I could answer, Sasha burst in, waving her phone. "Have you seen this? Someone leaked that you're doing the transplant. It's all over social media." Dr. Wells frowned. "Patient confidentiality." "It's fine," I interrupted, taking Sasha's phone. The post was from a local art blog. "Rising star artist Ren, to save father's life through bone marrow donation." "The comments are wild," Sasha said. "People are calling it everything from a publicity stunt to a modern fairy tale." "Great," I handed back her phone. "Now my private family drama is public entertainment." "Isn't that what you wanted?" Mom asked quietly. "Public acknowledgement?" "Not like this." I stood up abruptly. "I need air." I found myself in the same garden where Dad had been writing his speech. Sasha followed, because of course she did. "Talk to me," she said, sitting on a bench. I pulled out the letter, handed it to her. As she read, her eyes widened. "Holy shit, so he gave up his dreams because his father made him." "Yeah." I picked at a loose thread on my sleeve. "Doesn't excuse what he did to me, but it explains it?" Sasha suggested. "Maybe, I don't know." I looked at her. "What if I'm making a huge mistake? Using the transplant as leverage?" "Honey, that ship has sailed. The question now is, what are you going to do next?" My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Saw the news. Don't worry about it affecting the exhibition. Focus on your art. That's what matters." Another buzz. "Corey this time. Gallery's getting calls about the story. Want me to handle it?" "It's all spinning out of control," I told Sasha. "This was supposed to be about making him face what he did to me. Now it's becoming this whole thing." "Maybe that's not bad," she said. "Maybe it needs to be bigger than revenge." I thought about the articles he'd saved, his notes in the margins, about him sitting in this garden, writing a speech by hand instead of having his PR team do it. "I need to see him," I said suddenly. We found him in his room, asleep with a legal pad on his lap. Mom was right. He looked exhausted. I picked up the pad carefully. The speech was half finished, crossed out and rewritten multiple times. But one line stood out, unmarked by corrections. "My daughter taught me that the greatest act of courage isn't succeeding, it's daring to fail on your own terms." "He's been working on it all morning," Mom said from behind me. "Refuses to let anyone help." I placed the pad back on his lap. His eyes fluttered open. Ren? His voice was rough with sleep. Is everything okay? Yeah, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. I wanted to tell you that whatever you say at the exhibition, make it real. That's all that matters. He nodded slowly. I'm trying. I know. I touched his hand briefly. I'm trying too. Outside his room, Sasha was waiting with a knowing look. Shut up, I said before she could speak. Didn't say anything. She linked her arm through mine. Come on, let's go make some art about all this. God, no, I laughed. I think there's been enough drama already. But later that night, in my studio, I started a new painting. Not of a shadowy businessman this time, but of a man in a garden, writing his truth one painful word at a time. The exhibition space buzzed with anticipation. The story of the estranged artist's daughter saving her father's life had drawn twice the usual crowd, much to Corey's delight and my discomfort. Channel your inner socialite, Sasha advised, adjusting my dress. You've got this. Everyone's staring, I muttered, forcing a smile at another group of whispers and pointed fingers. They're admiring your work, Corey said, appearing with champagne. The new pieces are getting the most attention. He meant the garden painting. I'd finished it just days ago, hanging it in a quiet corner away from the main display. It was more intimate than my usual style, showing my father in his moment of vulnerability. Any word from the hospital? I asked Mom, who was checking her phone for the 100th time. They're on their way. The nurse insisted on accompanying him. She touched my arm. He's weak, Ren. Maybe we should skip the speech. No, I pulled away. That was the deal. Still holding on to that? Sasha raised an eyebrow. After everything? Before I could respond, a reporter approached. Ren, can you comment on the timing of your father's illness and your rising success in the art world? No comment. Corey stepped between us. Please respect the family's privacy. But the public wants to know? The public can look at the art, I snapped. That's what they're here for. More cameras flashed. More whispers. I escaped to the back room, leaning against the wall and closing my eyes. Deep breaths, Sasha said, following me. Want me to cause a distraction? I could spill wine on that pushy reporter. I laughed despite myself. Thanks, but he's here. Mom appeared in the doorway. But Ren, he's not doing well. I pushed past her into the gallery. Dad sat in a wheelchair, a nurse hovering nearby. He looked worse than ever, pale and drawn, but his eyes were alert as they scanned the room. The crowd parted as I approached. Phones came out. Someone started filming. You came, I said softly. I made a promise. His voice was barely audible. Show me? I wheeled him through the gallery, past my older works, the ones he'd never seen. He commented on each one, asking questions about technique and inspiration. His observations were surprisingly astute. You really did follow my career, I said as we reached the garden painting. He stared at it for a long moment. Is that how you see me now? It's how you are. We both are. I knelt beside his wheelchair. Dad, maybe we should skip the speech. You're not well. No. He gripped my hand with surprising strength. I need to do this. Help me up. The nurse protested, but he was already struggling to his feet. Corey quickly brought over a microphone and small platform we'd set up. The gallery fell silent as my father stood, shaking but determined. Cameras raised. Mom grabbed my hand. My daughter, he started, then coughed. The nurse moved forward, but he waved her away. My daughter Ren is an artist. 5 years ago I told her this was a mistake, that she was throwing her life away. He paused, breathing heavily. I found myself holding my breath too. I was wrong. His voice grew stronger. I see that now, looking at these walls, at what she's created. But my greatest mistake wasn't doubting her talent. It was letting my fear for her future destroy our present. Tears rolled down Mom's cheeks. Sasha squeezed my shoulder. I stand here today not because of a deal or an ultimatum, but because I'm proud. Proud of the artist she's become. Proud of the woman who had the courage I never did. He turned to face me directly. Proud to call you my daughter, if you'll still have me as your father." The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, but I barely noticed because Dad was swaying dangerously. I reached him just as his knees buckled. The nurse rushed forward with the wheelchair. "I did it," he whispered as we lowered him down. "I kept my word." "You did great," I said, wiping tears I hadn't realized were falling. "Now let's get you back to the hospital." "Wait." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. "My father's letter. Keep it. Remember that breaking cycles takes courage." As the nurse wheeled him out, reporters swarmed forward with questions. Corey and Sasha ran interference while Mom followed the wheelchair. I stood alone in the gallery, clutching 2 generations of letters about fathers and children and broken dreams. The revenge I'd planned felt hollow now, replaced by something more complicated, but also more real. My phone buzzed. "Dr. Wells. Transplant scheduled for tomorrow morning. Are you ready?" I looked at the garden painting, at the man writing his truth. "Yes," I typed back. "We both are." The transplant room was colder than I expected. Dad lay in one bed while I settled into another, both of us wearing matching hospital gowns that seemed designed to strip away any pretense of dignity. "Last chance to back out," Dr. Wells said, though we all knew I wouldn't. "Just don't mess up my painting arm," I joked weakly. Dad turned his head toward me. "Ren, I need to tell you something before—" "Save your strength," I interrupted. "We have time." "No." He struggled to sit up straighter. "I need to say this now, in case—" "Don't you dare." My voice cracked. "No deathbed confessions allowed." The nurses bustled around us, inserting IVs, checking monitors. Mom stood in the corner, clutching her purse like a lifeline. She'd aged 10 years in the past week. "The exhibition," Dad continued, ignoring my protest. "What I said, it wasn't just for show. I've been reading about your work for years, every article, every review." "I know." Mom showed me the folder. "No, not just the folder." He coughed. "I went to your first show, stood in the back. You were so confident, so sure of yourself. Just like you," Mom finished softly. A nurse approached with the first round of medications. "This might make you drowsy," she warned. "Wait," Dad said. "There's more. The day you left, after you stormed out, I looked at your portfolio." My breath caught. "What?" "The sketches you left on my desk. I looked at every single one. They were brilliant." His voice grew fainter as the medication took hold. I was just too proud to admit I was wrong. "Why didn't you tell me?" But his eyes were already closing. "He's been carrying that guilt for 5 years, Mom said, moving to my bedside. "Maybe that's punishment enough." Dr. Wells appeared with another syringe. "Ready?" I nodded, watching the clear liquid enter my IV. The room started to blur around the edges. "Mom?" I reached for her hand. "Will you tell me about Dad, when he played piano?" She smiled through tears, stroking my hair like she did when I was small. "He was amazing. Used to play late at night when he thought everyone was asleep. Chopin was his favorite." Her voice faded as the drugs pulled me under. I dreamed of music and paint, of letters and gardens, of fathers and daughters trying to break free of inherited fears. When I surfaced, Sasha was there, scrolling through her phone. "Welcome back, Sleeping Beauty," she grinned. "You'll never guess what's trending." "Please tell me they didn't film the transplant." "No, but your gallery painting? The one of your dad in the garden? It's gone viral. People are calling it Redemption in Green. Pretentious much?" "How is he?" I tried to sit up, but the room spun. "Stable. The doctors are optimistic." She helped me with some water. "Corey's been fielding calls from collectors all morning. Apparently family drama is good for business." "Great. My pain is profitable." "Hey," she grabbed my hand. "Stop that. This stopped being about pain the moment you saw those articles he saved. Admit it. This is about healing now." Before I could argue, Dr. Wells entered with Mom. "The preliminary results are good," she announced. "The stem cells are doing exactly what we hoped." "Can I see him?" "He's still sedated, but—" Mom started. "Please." They wheeled my bed into his room. He looked peaceful, younger somehow without the weight of unspoken words. "I found something else," Mom said, pulling out her phone. "Listen." She pressed play. Piano music filled the room, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The recording was old, slightly scratchy. "Dad?" She nodded. "From college, before he gave it up." "He was good," I whispered. "The best," she agreed. "Just like you with your art." "We're not so different, are we?" I watched his chest rise and fall. "Both trying to live up to impossible expectations. Both breaking free in your own ways," Sasha added. Mom played another recording, this one of a livelier piece. In his bed, Dad's fingers twitched slightly, muscle memory dancing across invisible keys. "When he wakes up," I said, "I want to paint him playing, not in the garden this time, at a piano." "He'd like that," Mom smiled. "And maybe," I hesitated, "maybe he could teach me, if he wants to." Sasha wiped away a suspicious moisture from her eyes. "Look at you, going from revenge to piano lessons. Character development much?" "Shut up," I laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at my IV. In the other bed, Dad stirred slightly. His monitors beeped steadily, strong and sure, like a metronome keeping time for a piece we were just learning to play together. "Rest," Mom said, seeing my eyes grow heavy again. "You both have plenty of time now." As I drifted off, Chopin's notes wrapped around us like a promise of second chances, of new beginnings painted in shades of forgiveness. The piano notes drifted through my childhood home, hesitant but determined. I followed the sound to the living room, where Dad sat at his newly restored baby grand, fingers moving carefully over the keys. "You're rushing the middle section," I said, setting my art supplies down. He smiled without stopping. "And you're late for your lesson." Gallery meeting ran long. Apparently, Redemption in Green is being featured in Modern Art Quarterly. The music faltered. "That's the garden piece?" "Mm-hmm." I unpacked my sketchbook. "Keep playing. I need to catch your hands at the right angle." He returned to the piece, Chopin, always Chopin, while I sketched. The afternoon sun caught the silver in his hair, the slight tremor in his recovered hands. "You're staring," he noted. "Artist's prerogative." I smudged a shadow with my thumb. "Besides, you stared at my work for 5 years without telling me." "Fair enough." He hit a wrong note, cursed softly. "It's harder than I remembered. Starting over usually is." The front door opened and Mom's voice called out, "I brought dinner! Sasha and Corey are here too." "Perfect timing," Dad said, closing the piano lid. "I need a break." "Giving up already?" I teased. He gave me a look. "Resting. There's a difference." Sasha burst in, carrying takeout bags. "Ooh, are we finally getting a piano concert?" "Not today," Dad and I said simultaneously. "Creepy," Sasha stage whispered to Corey, who was setting up plates. "They're starting to sink." Mom arranged the food while I cleared away my art supplies. Dad moved to help, but his hands shook slightly. "I've got it," I said quietly. "I'm not made of glass, Ren." "No, but you are recovering from major surgery and a 3-hour piano session." I gestured at the couch. "Sit." He sat, but not without grumbling. "When did you become the parent?" "When you decided to nearly die on me." The room fell silent. We didn't talk about that much. The transplant, the fear, the uncertainty. It was still too raw. "Speaking of parenting," Corey broke the tension. "Show them, babe." I pulled out my phone, opened the email I'd received during the gallery meeting. "Remember that arts education initiative I mentioned? They want me to run their youth program, teaching kids from underprivileged backgrounds." "Ren, that's wonderful," Mom exclaimed. "It's part-time," I continued, watching Dad's reaction. "So I can still paint, still do exhibitions, but also give back, you know?" Dad nodded slowly. "Teaching the next generation to be brave." "Braver than we were," I agreed. "Oh," Sasha jumped up. "Show them the other thing." I shot her a look, but she was already pulling the rolled canvas from my art bag. "Sasha, they'll love it." Dad leaned forward as she unfurled the painting. It showed him at the piano, but not as he was now. This was young Dad, playing with abandon, joy evident in every brushstroke. "How?" Mom's voice cracked. "How did you know what he looked like then?" Found his old college photos. Plus, I gestured at my face. Apparently, I looked just like him at that age. Who knew? Dad touched the canvas gently. Is this for your office? I finished. If you want it. Kind of a thank you for the piano lessons. Even though I'm a terrible teacher, especially because you're a terrible teacher. He laughed, then grew serious. I don't deserve this. Maybe not. I sat beside him. But that's not why I painted it. I painted it because I wanted to capture the moment before fear won. Before you gave up your dreams. I didn't give them up, he said softly. I just passed them on. In a different form. Sasha pretended to gag. Okay, enough emotional growth. Can we eat before the food gets cold? We gathered around the coffee table, passing containers, sharing stories. Mom insisted on hearing about the youth program. Corey talked about the gallery's expansion plans. Dad complained about his physical therapy, while secretly looking pleased at his progress. As the evening wound down, he returned to the piano. This time the notes were stronger, more confident. I picked up my sketchbook again. Still staring, he noted. Still drawing, I countered. We've got a lot of lost time to capture. The music swelled, filling the room with possibilities, not of what could have been, but of what could still be. Hey, Dad? I'm glad you were wrong, about art being a mistake. His fingers never stopped moving across the keys. I'm glad you were strong enough to prove it. I started a new sketch, this one of the present moment. Family gathered close, music in the air, the future an empty canvas waiting to be filled. Not with revenge or regret, but with second chances, played in perfect time.